Hello there, sword friends. This is going to be a video overviewing some of the random bits that I've come across lately and that I've purchased. I've been on a little bit of a buying spree, which hasn't been the case for the last couple of years. Over the COVID period, I picked up some onesie-twosie pieces. Well, more than onesie-twosie, but I haven't gone quite, off the deep end like I have recently. So I'm going to tell you about some of the pieces that I picked up. Most of them, I believe, are from estates. Most of them kind of started on eBay. Maybe there's some knowledge to garner there. But I'm going to just talk about the pieces that I've gotten. Hopefully it's interesting. So the first one is a Bob Engnath Unokobe-zukuri katana. Now, some time ago, the Mystery Man in Black did a project called Waning Life, and I sold it for him, and it was an amazing wakizashi. It was really cool. I did a video on it. I'd encourage you to check it out. But the gist is, I haven't had a Bob Engnath wakizashi. I've talked a lot about many custom blades, many custom smiths, and it's a topic of frequent discussion on my channel. But I hadn't had anything from Bob Engnath, and he holds a special place in my heart and in my interest because, as an American smith, fellow countryman, there's a tie there that I do appreciate. But also, he was an instigator or somebody that kind of began the Renaissance in American blade making in swords and whatnot, particularly in the Japanese variety, and had a hand in tutoring or teaching or sharing information with many of the craftsmen that whose work I really enjoy and appreciate today. And so it's one of those things that I do find special. I got into the hobby after he had passed away. I never got a chance to talk to him, and his pieces come up for sale very rarely, so I feel fortunate to have a few in my hand. And Waning Life was the first one. I really enjoyed the work. It's kind of crazy that I hear stories about him selling, bare blades at gun shows for a couple $100 or something like that, but he didn't charge a lot back in the day. Certainly not what his work is worth today. Certainly not what the market would probably be today. Anyway, this one is pretty cool. It's an Unokobe-zukuri. Of all the swords I'm going to tell you about today, this is probably the zinger, the coolest one. One Unokobe-zukuri geometry. It's different. It has a kind of thinned out spine, thickened section down at the base of the blade, and it's got a nice swollen tip with an okisaki on it, and it is quite the stunner. I've talked to Josiah Boomershine about having he put in it. So a naginata style he, that's this little thing that starts above the habaki area here and then tapers off at this little point. And I'm debating putting it in. It's rather expensive. It's about $700 to put this little 4 or 5 inch bow he in, but it's a lot of work for Josiah. So I'm debating it. This is not a sword that is my size, but it's just so cool and so uncommon. Bob, I don't think, did a lot of Unokobe-zukuri geometry blades. I don't see a lot of them done in kind of custom blades at all. And putting that little bohea in, I think, would be some special sauce. So I'm really tempted to do it. This blade just has a really compelling and cool shape. I'll maybe back it up. I don't think I can quite get it in frame. But it just has a really cool overall look and feel to it. It's kind of a special looking thing. I might just have to do it. I'm not sure. I'm not sure which way I'm going to go with it because it's a through hardened blade, or not a through hardened. It's a differentially hardened, probably 1050 something steel blade. It doesn't have a hata. It doesn't have that. I don't know exactly how much it's going to be worth in the end, and it's not my size, so I struggle investing a whole lot in it. But it looks so cool if it had that bohea in it. Anyway, I like the shape. I like the feel of the overall blade. This one seems pretty special, and it's also a little bit on the thinner side, and that's not necessarily in a bad way. It's a little bit more Japanese in terms of profile. It's not as robust as many of the modern-made American blades tend to be. And that means I have some fittings of a tachi variety that may actually fit on it that I've been trying to find a blade for umpteen years. But I may be able to put this in a tachi-style mount, which would be even doubly cool. So that's my thought process. Anyway, I'm thinking about doing that, but that's the Bob Engnath Unokobe-zukuri blade. This one, as well, Bob didn't sign his work, so you can kind of tell by the hamon. But there's an element of trust that goes into it. You have to kind of see some of the telltale signs of his work, but he uncommonly worked in Unokobe-zukuri. The tang in Nikago looks symptomatic of the work I've seen from Bob, but the shape is a little bit smaller. The hamon looks a little bit different, or at least it's tough to tell, but it looks a little bit more bold than I've seen in some of the others. But there's not a window polished in this blade for me to really tell. So it's a little bit on faith. Not so much. There's been some very reputable people that have told me that it's a blade from Bob Engnath. I've asked around. I've got some confirmations. I feel pretty confident in it, but there's always that element of risk. What else? This is the other. I'm going to go on a Bob Engnath kick here. This is the other blade from Bob Engnath, and it is a big, kind of long 30-inch cutter. Not a particularly giant geometry. It looks more in line with things that I've seen from Bob's work in the past, but maybe a little bit more like a Seguha hamon. It's really tough to tell what the end profile of this blade will be, but it's a long one, and Bob was known, I guess, for putting a little bit longer handles. Let's see if I can put this paper scabbard back together. Oh, that's the downside of paper. He was known for having some longer nakago, so I'm not sure how this blade is going to turn out, but it is a longer blade, which is kind of cool. It's uncommon for me to find 30-inch blades out there, so one made by a custom competent smith with a cool story behind it. This is maybe the one that's a little bit more my size, and if I'm likely to keep any of them, well, I don't know. That Tachi one is just so cool, but it doesn't fit me. The 30-inch blade, though, on this means that I might actually be able to use this for training, so I'm kind of excited about it. The handle, I'm going to have to work to minimize, though, so if I figure there's a habaki here, the handle's going to be a little bit long for me, but overall still a cool profile, and it looks like it will probably fit with Toyama Ryu, or the style that I practice. It doesn't have a particularly deep sori. It looks like it'll be a fun training blade. Continuing on the Bob Engnath kick, I have this wakizashi, which bears some resemblance to the Waning Life wakizashi that I had a moment ago, but is different. So it has, it doesn't have a kind of profiled tang. It's stouter. It doesn't have that naginata naoshi style profile. It tapers slightly, but it doesn't have a spine that's kind of tapered back or anything like that. Also, it has this very weird spot on the mune that basically disappears and flattens out. I'm not sure why, but I'm probably going to send this. Well, that's not the only thing odd about the blade. It looks like there are some holes drilled, and initially maybe this was planned to have a different style grip on it, be mounted up with scales or something like that. At the same time, it has the profiles of a Japanese style sword on it. So I'm not entirely sure what the plan is, but I'm likely going to send this to Josiah. Well, not likely. I will send it to Josiah. I've just been lazy and haven't done it already, but the plan is to send this to Josiah, have him correct the mune. It'll probably change the shape just a little bit to figure out how to get the spine in line. And I don't think I'll move this up. I'll likely just have him make a habaki, or somebody make a habaki, and put it over and leave this hole drilled out underneath to keep the length and preserve the length of the blade. And then it will be a cool stout wakizashi and wait, don't punch my microphone. It'll be a cool stout wakizashi and a pretty robust cutting profile. I think this will be a really kind of awesome cutter. And I'm not sure about polish. I might have a Yokote put on. It's kind of in a Shobu-esque Zukuri style blade, or at least it doesn't look like it has a Yokote intentionally put on it just yet. If I do that, it'll have a big giant Okasaki, which I think will be pretty spectacular. Now, some time ago, I did a video on an Anthony de Cristofano katana that I have, and it's one of my favorite pieces in my collection. And this is a Osaraku Tanto, which means it's like a super Okasaki. It's like kind of in the middle. The tip begins, and it's polished, or will be polished eventually, to have this big giant tip on it. So they're kind of cool looking blades when they're done. But this one was done by Anthony de Cristofano. It's an Anthony de Cristofanto. Tanto? There we go. Anyway, it's a special piece. Very rarely do pieces from Anthony come up for sale. I happen to get this one. Again, it needs to be polished, needs to be finished, but it's pretty cool looking. And so I'm eager to see how it all comes out. Tanto are not particularly interesting to me. It's not my focus, but it seems a cool idea to have a daisho made for the Anthony de Cristofano katana that I have. This is special. I really like Anthony de Cristofano's work. I think he is an absolutely amazing craftsman, and so this is a special one for me. I really like that katana. You may notice I very often do projects, put things up for sale, and many moons ago I bought that Anthony DiCristofano katana, and I just haven't been able to put it up for sale. I really like it. It's not the right size for me, but there's just something special about it that is so cool to me that it's one of the keepers. And so this will kind of pair out a daisho, and I think that to me is cool. It's rare to have the opportunity to do that. Rare to do it on a tanto style budget. Anyway, so I have an Anthony DiCristofano tanto to finish up as well. The last blade in the series of unfinished blades that I have, at least at the moment. I'm debating buying more as of the recording of this video. But the last one that I have is another Howard Clark L6 katana. And I don't know if I talked about this on my channel or not yet, but I did talk about the unfinished L6 katana that I had already, and I'm debating getting it mounted. This one is another one. So I now have two unfinished L6 katana from Howard Clark. This one is a little bit wider bodied profile. This seems like a little bit more like a Toyama Ryu blade. Unfortunately, it is not my size. It's a little bit small. It's still gonna make somebody a very competent cutter. It's got a profile on it that just seems like it's gonna be a mean blade when it's done. Very often the L6 blades from Howard Clark don't have the kind of width on them. They don't seem as wide as the dedicated lawnmowers. And this one, well, it's still not as wide as many of those dedicated lawnmowers. It is a little bit more on the beefy side than I'm accustomed to seeing from him. So it's going to be a pretty cool sword when it's all said and done. All right. These blades I did not buy. They were sent to me from Dark Sword Armory, but I haven't showed them exactly. So one is the Messer from Dark Sword Armory. And these are kind of factory rejects. They weren't finished properly, and they were sent off for me to just have some fun with, at least as Yael said to me in an email. So I'll do some fun stuff. I don't know that I can do like a kind of an official review because some of these just didn't pass QC. So they're not really the greatest example of what you would get if you were to buy one new. But I can do some generally, shenanigansy kind of stuff, and it might give you some idea if this is something you'd be interested in or not. But this Messer is a stout beefcake of a blade. I think the guard is a little bit more built than it needs to be, in fairness, but I like this kind of two-handed grip, curve forward, this kind of saber grip, and it's got a stout, chunky blade. Anyway, it's a bit of a wrist killer for me, but not quite the wrist killer that its larger cousin is. This one, I can't remember. I keep thinking like Knockenbacher or something. I'm not sure if that's the name. I keep mixing up the name, but this, I've been on a Messer kick, you might say, from Sword Friend Ian, who has been gracious enough to send me a number of Messers from his collection. And I asked Dark Sword Armory, hey, if you're going to send me another sword, can you send me one of these Messers that you have? And it is a big and heavy sword, but it is also a Messer and cool, but built very differently. I think they're doing some modifications or something like that to the design, or anyway, this one didn't make the cut. It is as well a factory second, but I can talk about this big, giant Knockenbacher Messer, and it is big, and it is also more flamboyant than many of the Messers that I've seen. It has kind of a modern, not fantasy, but a contemporary take on Messers, at least to my eye. I like it though. It just has some character. It's big though. It's big, but I do like I like it overall. There's some changes I would certainly make, but I happen to like the interpretation of a Messer. It's fun. All right, on to other recent acquisitions. These were purchased off eBay. I noticed a link that came up, or a listing that came up, and it said sword, $50. And there's 8 of them, and not necessarily a very thorough description. Again, I believe this is from an estate. Somebody just looking to liquidate, doesn't know exactly what's there. Unfortunately, when I bought them as well, there was some shipping damage sustained, but I feel like for the money that I paid, I'm still very satisfied with the overall outcome. Shipping damage is unfortunate, but I don't know. I'm very happy with it. So anyway, you'll see why, especially at the end. But these were more than $50, incidentally. But that was the original per asking price. But anyway, this one, I have no idea what it is. I can't make out. I can't tell what it is. The Nikago looks like something from Longchuan, China. Not in a bad way, but it's not dolled up, so it's not a Hanwei piece. And the steel pattern on it is just very unfamiliar, and the blade shape is Chungus. It's a big, big honkin' blade. I don't recognize the kind of folding pattern in the steel. It looks like it was differentially heat treated with a similar template to Hanwei or other blades of the time. The polish on it is confused. It looks like the Yokote is put off at a weird angle. I have no idea what this blade is. It's got some cool characteristics in it, but it's a strange one. I really have no idea what to make it. I don't know what to make of it. The profile is just bigger and different, and it's a different shape. It has a saya as well that is on the basic side, so I suspect it's probably something along like the lines of a Musashi or something like that, but there's no indicators. There's a 02 stamped in here, and that's about it, but I have no idea. There's no logos of any kind, so it's purely speculation on what the sword is. I believe whoever owned these some time ago, that they're old, probably 20 or more years old would be the date range that I put on these swords. The next one I believe to be an attempt at a daisho that was remounted or done up a little bit differently. So the Suba, I believe, was replaced because there are 3 seppa on here, and the blade, the Nakago, tells me that this is likely a Hanwei because this Yusurime, this file marks on the blade, are very symptomatic of blades that I've seen on Hanwei. The Fujikashira look like very early edition Hanwei Shinto blades, as does the blade. It looks like a very early Hanwei Shinto blade, and it looks like whoever owned this sword before was a big fan of the urushi ball because it's like been buffed over years and years and years of cleaning. When I got it, it needed a little bit of cleaning. Some of them did have some rust on them. This one, unfortunately, got a cracked saya in shipping. Shipping had many issues. I'll show you those later. But I believe I can identify this one as a Hanwei Shinto. The blade profile, the Fujikashira, look like a Hanwei Shinto. The Suba just looks like it was replaced, so I think that much makes sense anyway. Next one in the mystery list, not as confident on. The Suba looks like it may have been replaced. I don't know. The Fujikashira are not something that I've seen from Hanwei before and look almost like they were customized, but I don't know. And the blade is more sizable than I've seen on other Hanwei blades. This, I really don't know what to make of it. It doesn't appear to be a folded blade, but there are some things in the surface of the blade that make me think maybe it is folded. It could be banding in the metal, though. I've been wrong on that in a few occasions. The Nakago, I can tell, is from Hanwei. The Yusurime, the signature on it, all look very common to Hanwei. This cut-off piece, though, looks like the Nakago may have been longer and was cut off. Sometimes they've end like this, sometimes they don't. Either way, it looks like it's out of the Hanwei forge. I'm not sure really what to make of it or what model this would have been, though, because, again, it appears to be a very early blade. Maybe it's been a remounted Musashi. That could be it. But I honestly, I really don't know. The saya on it as well is not one that I recognize. The Musashi saya had, like, the original one had little men in it. This one is very similar to the Shinto. It's just a plain gloss black saya. But the blade just isn't something I've seen from Hanwei's early work. Nor is the Suba. I don't know if this was added on or changed later. Anyway, it's a bit of a mystery to me. If you happen to know, throw it in the commentary down below. At least last mystery list from Hanwei is this one. I don't know what it is. It's an Oda Nobunaga size. So now the Nobunaga katana is a very similar Suba. It's similar, but still a little bit different. This one, though, appears to be Hanwei. It's got the casting quality of Hanwei. I think it's a special edition, though, and I can't really recognize it. But it's got all the Hanwei build quality stuff that you might kind of expect. Unfortunately, there's been some damage and dings. The Nobunaga signal is on here. It's got a red Koiguchi on here. It says number 99 or on 66. I'm not sure which one it is, and it appears to be basically an older version of a Hanwei practical katana. It's a little worse for wear in terms of the overall appearance of the blade. There was a heavy etch done on it, and some of that etch has been cleaned away. There's also a lot of sign of handling, fake ray skin. It's clearly a budget-minded blade, but a special edition, not one that I can find a lot of information on online. But I believe it's a Nobunaga-themed katana, and I can make out kind of signs of Hanwei's casting quality here and just kind of general build quality. Not a very high-end sword, but something I haven't seen before. A little bit of a mystery for me to track down. Another one that came in was this, I believe, a Marto Highlander katana. And unfortunately, This one has been damaged. It's not a particularly special sword. I think it's might be their 1045 blades. This is an attempt at sharpening, but it's a wire brushed hamon, nothing special. The casting on here is, on the handle anyway, clear. I like the Highlander logos. The head, unfortunately, has a big crack running down it and is unfortunately just, it's, if it wasn't a display piece before, it certainly is now, because if I cut anything with it, the head is just going to pop off. The scabbard as well is metal, which is, I haven't had one of these Marto ones with metal scabbards before, so interesting, but it came in the lot, you might say. The build quality it's just meh. I'd certainly prefer something from Point Gallery with the handle and something built to be used. This looks like it was quasi meant to be used, but not really. And unfortunately, like I said, there's a big crack running down the dragon head sword. It's not going to last through any kind of use. The next one is again one from Marto, and again one that has sustained some shipping damage. It's got this red scabbard on it, similar to the way Ramirez was shown in the footage. Fortunately, I can still get the sword out. It as well appears to be a 1045 blade with a wire brushed hamon on it. I'm not sure what else to make of the sword. It's goofy and dumpy and strange, and the scabbard's busted, and it has this weird dragon head on it that I don't know. I don't know if this is like an original Marto piece, one that like inspired some. I'm not sure, but it's an odd duck. And one more Highlander katana here, and this one is special. It again is it's the Highlander, the original movie series katana. It has the kind of dragon head. It looks like it's from the movie, though a little bit more zazzy. The glamour shots of the original Highlander sword didn't have this kind of Nanako pattern laid in. Maybe it's from a different movie. I can't remember, because I don't think the original movie had a fuchi on it. I'm not sure, and there was a bronze or a brass peg down at the end. Maybe it's from a later Highlander movie. Not entirely sure. Anyway, this one has a metal scabbard. It's kind of similar to the way the other swords are made, but in drawing it, again, we have this 1045 Marto steel, but here is somebody's signature, and who is it but Randy Jackson? No, I'm sorry, Step Brothers reference. I couldn't miss the opportunity to say, but it's Chris Lambert, I believe, and I believe this is a signature, so it's a signed Christopher Lambert katana, which is neat. I don't, I'm not a specialist in signature verification, but it appears to be a collectible one, number 296 of 3,000 of a Marto signed Christopher Lambert katana. The signature on it, I believe, is written in Sharpie. I don't know if it's etched in or not, but I've been, loath to clean it because I don't want to rub the signature off. But it's neat that it's a signed kind of collectible version from Christopher Lambert. So that's special. This sword is not of particular interest to me because of the gimmickiness, the Marto, the lack of usability, but that it's signed kind of makes it a special, I don't know, it's a little bit more interesting anyway. And I used to, the original Highlander was the movie that I fell in love with. I liked the show, don't get me wrong, but the movie, the original in particular, was the one that, one thing that contributed to my current, maybe over fascination with swords. All right, the last sword that came in this bundle of swords that I bought eight swords from a person, was this one, and it is a Hanwei Bushido, and one that I thought I recognized out of the gate. Now, again, it's had the same treatment with Urushi in that it's a little bit more buffed than the original Hanwei polishes, and it's got some minor imperfections and little spots on it of rust, but overall pretty clean. I can't tell what version of the Hanwei it is as well, but the Yusuri Mei is a little bit cleaner than I'm typically used to seeing on Hanwei blades. It's not as rugged. The Hata on it is a little bit more subtle, but very pretty. Overall, I really like the Bushido, and it's been a while since I've revisited it. This one has kind of white buffalo horn on the Kurigata, on the Koiguchi. The Fujikashira also are a little bit on the smaller side. It lends itself to just feeling really good. And it's dawned on me as I've played with some of these Hanwei swords, and I've gotten a couple more. I have a Golden Oriole that I picked up not too long ago, as well as a Lion Dog, the Hanwei version of the Lion Dog. And it strikes me that Hanwei has some imperfections and some issues that I would say don't give them the same value proposition they used to have. But one thing that they do that other manufacturers don't is variety of shape. They have a lot more shape in terms of, they make the scabbards, they make the handles, they do all of it. And so they make things that accommodate different shapes, as where many vendors in Longquan, China tend to buy saya from the same vendor. That limits them on the shape that they can have, the shape of the nakago that they put out, the shape of the saya that they put out, the shape of the blade that they put out. And so you see a little bit less variety in many of the swords from Longquan. Might vary in length, but they don't tend to vary a lot in width. They don't tend to vary a lot in general profile. And Hanweis do, at least to a larger degree. Anyway, the Bushido is one such blade that might blend in a little bit more, but the Fuchikashira, the fittings, the overall mounting is just special. I like the kind of falling or floating cherry blossoms over this kind of pearl bronze kind of theme. It's a special looking sword, and one that I kind of feel fortunate to have in my hand once more. I think back on my old review on this, on how it's just a really well balanced sword, and I stand by that. This is a fine feeling sword. I can tell because I like the feel of it in bare blade format. I like the feel of it without the kashira or the koshirai on it. Anyway, those are the swords that I got. The Hanwei Bushido is kind of the crown jewel, I think, of this. It's a nice folded, well done, and it didn't arrive damaged, which I'm very pleased about. So I think I came out. I think I'm going to come out ahead on one finally. So anyway, those are the swords that I got. Hopefully it's been an interesting video. If you have any questions about any of them, throw them in the commentary down below. I don't know that I'm going to review any of these because you can't get them necessarily. Obviously the Dark Sword Armory ones I will, and I'll tell you about the projects that I finished. But I don't necessarily plan on reviewing any of the kind of oddball ones that I got. But if you have some special interest in it, let me know, and maybe I'll think about doing a full blabbery video about it. That's all I got, though. Cheers. Thanks for watching.